Hi witchlings, welcome back to my channel. I'm sorry that it's a little later than usual this week. I was resting, getting some writing done, all that really fun, good stuff. Today we are going to be talking about books of shadows, what they are, why we have them, how to start one, why do they exist? So starting off, this is my original book of shadows. That is very beat up, as you can tell. This is a whole chunk kind of coming out of the book. It's been in use for a very long time, and it's definitely very messy. So Book of Shadows is basically, I would like to refer it to as like a witchy diary. It's where you put rituals, spells, information, anything that is of use to you in your personal practice as the practitioner or as a witch, as an occultist, etc. There are some famous books of shadows by Scott Cunningham, other occultist books of shadows on how to summon demons, all that fancy stuff. Now, what you may notice is that a lot of people use the term grimoire and Book of Shadows interchangeably. That is not necessarily correct. A grimoire is a little less personal, a little bit more information, something that's typically passed down. It can be used by other people. A Book of Shadows is very much more about personal rituals and different things that benefit you but may not help other people. So for me, a lot of these are very personal spells, sigils, prayers, information, etc. And as you can tell, like I said, it's very beaten up. It's been in use for a long time. It's very special to me, as you can tell. Now, as of recently, instead of buying a new notebook for my next Book of Shadows, I have decided to make my Book of Shadows digital. What that basically means is that I am taking all the information from here and putting it into a Word document. This makes it easier to add, to delete, to change, and just kind of go from there. And it's a little better for the environment too. Now, whether you want to have a Book of Shadows in a notebook form, online in a Word document, even in your iPhone notes, or any or all of the above. I know some witches that used a binder for their Book of Shadows so they could take out pages and add them in easily. But all of those are okay. There's no right way to do a Book of Shadows. As you can see, I have a page with my Freya, my goddess, in here. My devotion pages are a way of worship to them. I had one for Apollo when I still worked with him, etc. The real question I get a lot is like, is it necessary? Do I have to have it? Absolutely not. You do not need to have a Book of Shadows. Having a Book of Shadows is the practitioner's choice. My friend Temperance Alden, in her book Year of the Witch, talks about how she doesn't have a Book of Shadows but merely writes down what she feels during a ritual. Some people never write their rituals down. They do full intuitive craft. Some people prefer to not put any information like herbs or crystals, etc. in there because they can easily find it online. Whatever you want to do is your choice. It really is up to you. And a lot of people are like, well, what do I even put in my Book of Shadows? For example, my first thing in here was a snow spell and a healing spell. Very first page for any information. From there, I go towards the Witch's Pyramid, basic healing herbs and crystals, moon magic, purification spells, moon water, sleep well spell, general warding, basic warding, a charming spell, positivity spell. A lot of it is, information. I have like astral projection info in here. I have different tarot spreads, daily witchy things, sigils. I have different pages for each of the elements. This is air, I believe, water and earth here. And I have a lot of planetary information and all this stuff, and I spent a lot of time making this look really pretty, which you don't have to do. Over the years, it's gotten a little bit more chaotic, is the way to put it. I have like pictures from a cord cutting spell, dried herbs, their pages falling out, and different kind of little sections where you can open them up, and there's information there. It's definitely, been well worn, is kind of the way that I put it. And so, like I said, the Book of Shadows and what the Book of Shadows entails is really up to you. I like to usually start with a spell. or in my computer, my digital book of shadows, I can go over the kind of sections and what I have in it, what has kind of been removed and what still remains. So Book of Shadows, it's currently 91 pages because I actually copied and pasted like an herbal kind of chart into it, so I have access to the information without having to research it. I started off talking about my patron deities and have little information for each of them, including invocations. And then my patron saints, novenas to them. I have a positivity spell, which is the first spell I ever did, on page 6, after all those prayers. Purification spell, I talk about my deep cleanse rituals that I do on the first or second Saturday of the month, novenas for success, my basic warding ritual, general warding herbs and crystals, tying a word to an object, protective charm bags, a bunch of different spells that I use, and then certain things like the knot spell, which is relatively well known, also known as the witch's ladder. And what I like, oh, and ceromancy is in here, candle reading, so wax strips, smoking, etc., casting a circle. So what I noticed too is with my paper version of my Book of Shadows, I was going back in and editing information or covering information over, or taking out information that wasn't necessary, that I no longer used in my practice. And although it was really nice to see what I was doing at the beginning of my practice versus now, I still felt like there were some more important things than me talking about like my astrological chart in here. For example, I no longer use tarot spreads. I definitely don't use a lot of the sigils that are in here anymore. The ones that I do are going to be taken, like pictures will be taken of them and they will be put into my digital Book of Shadows. A lot of this was like, I also use this as a journal or a place for me to really kind of talk about my feelings. I wrote poetry in here, so I didn't really keep it as like condensed as I wish I had. And then looking back on it when I was trying to save paper, I was going back in and pasting new paper over old paper, etc. And I decided, you know what? I know that I'm going to continue growing as a witch and as a practitioner, and it's easier for me to have my grimoire digitally, where I can change the rituals, change my information, update it as I continue changing as a practitioner. For example, I have information on the lunar cycles, the 2021 Asbats, my personal Wheel of the Year, inspired by Temperance Alden. I do have different elemental information, water, earth, etc. Crystals copied and pasted from the internet, because for me, I never really used my Book of Shadows to look for information on crystals and herbs. I always went to the internet or went to a book that I already had and like looked it up there. And so me writing down things about basic healing herbs and crystals in my book was more helping me memorize and familiarize myself with these tools rather than actually like going in and looking at them. And so what this does for me is I can basically command find, which helps us find in a Word document, and I can look for like protection and go through, and I can go down to the crystal section and see all stones highlighted that are good for protection, and also herbs that are good for protection in the same vein. And so it's really easy for me and more easy for my brain to kind of find things. So like, there are a lot of herbs for protection, and I will give you the little link that I found this lovely table at below in my basically little bio area. But even then, there's some things in here that I definitely will never use, but I think it's still good to have information on them. This has become a really great way for me to have a bunch of information in one place, but also where all my rituals are. I can personalize these rituals, change these rituals. So other things I have are concentration jar. I will do well on my test spell, return to sender, love spell to manifest the right lever, bath to banish negativity, and uncrossing bath, a salt bowl for cleansing, protection, and self-love, a commanding spell, information on veiling and paganism, because I do veil a lot, a spell for balance, self-love, heartbreak, heal, cord cutting, water and its purposes, different kind of commanding and domination oils, powders, and herbs. Like, I have so much, everything from information on the Mulocchio from Italian folk magic to understanding justice spells, etc. And Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with this kind of digital layout. I think it's really great for me and how I learn as a person, which, you know, is very important to note that everyone learns differently. So talking about how to start your Book of Shadows. Your Book of Shadows, to me, is not only a kind of marker for your progress as a witch, but a way to keep track of your rituals. So I always try to either write the ritual down as I'm in it or plan ahead. Sometimes I forget. I have lost spells that I've done like once that worked really well because I forgot to write it down. I get that from my mom. She never writes her recipes down. I never write my spells down. So it helps us keep track of whether this spell worked, it didn't work, etc. I like to kind of give a little marker for like this spell worked really well or this spell needs more fine tuning. And it makes it easier to see, okay, let me go back through this spell and see where I could have gone wrong. Instead of just kind of doing it, forgetting about it, and being like, this didn't work, what do I do? In the same vein, it's a great way to kind of keep information close to you, make it more personalized, really kind of plan like, okay, on this moon I do this. It is a really personal task, and I have showed pages of information in my Book of Shadows on the internet before. As I kind of move it to digital, I will be doing that less just because a lot more pages are personal and personal information and personal spells, and I don't like to share my spells online. I do a monthly spell with my Patreon where I create a spell from scratch for them to use throughout the month. We had a protection spell this past month, and I'm not sure what we're going to be doing this month. Yeah, the Book of Shadows is really like, other than yourself being the ultimate tool, like the witch being the ultimate tool, the ultimate power, it is a really valuable tool. And reminder, it is a tool. Some people may opt not to use it at all. Some people want to use rituals out of books and make them on the spot and forget them. The reason we have the Books of Shadows is because, you know, that's how we used to keep track of our magic. You'll see a lot of Book of Shadows in the Wiccan world, because Wicca is a religion and there's a lot of structure and rituals, there's a lot of information and ceremonial rites to take in. There are a lot of Books of Shadows or grimoires on different magics. I always encourage people to get creative with their Book of Shadows. And know that just because your Book of Shadows looks a certain way doesn't mean your friends will look the same and vice versa. Yeah, that's kind of everything I have to say about kind of BOS's Books of Shadows. I'm sorry that this video was late and it's a little shorter than normal, but I do have a collab with Warrior Witch Nike coming out this upcoming week, hopefully. We did one for her channel on deity work, and ours is going to be talking about occult and witchy hot takes. So if you're interested in hearing my hot takes, that's coming out on Wednesday. We'll be back to our normal schedule. If you have any questions about Books of Shadows or grimoires, the difference, etc., leave a comment down below. You can like, subscribe, turn the notifications and the bells on if you want. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.